This Creditors in Commerce classroom session, hereinafter session, is the private exchange of ideas and concepts between the providers and the recipients. The content is not meant as legal advice. The use or attempted use of any idea or procedure discussed in this session as applied to the recipient's own personal transactions, cases, or controversy, or applied to other cases, may or may not result in a favorable outcome or the same outcome as discussed in this session. Each transition or transaction, case, or controversy may be different as a result of unique actions or unique statements made by the parties therein, and each different act or statement in any transaction affects or may affect whether any procedure or idea discussed in this session is relevant to your transaction or that the outcome thereof will be depicted as in this session. The discussion of ideas or procedures in this session is not exhaustive of the subject being discussed. Many ideas and concepts that can affect the outcome of any legal or commercial procedure are not discussed in this session, and the fact that you may not be aware of these issues may have an adverse effect on the outcome of your procedure. It is the responsibility of each party to understand his own transactions and to apply the appropriate and complete concepts necessary for a procedural and substantive remedy thereto. This session may be redistributed privately by any recipient to another recipient requesting them, conditioned upon the fact that this notice is provided therewith. If you have any questions, you may contact Brandon by email at harmony@creditorsincommerce.com or by telephone at 702-866-9077.
Oh yeah. Well, we're gonna distribute them anyways. Alrighty, welcome. I'll just hold these on for right now. Okay, for those of you who have done the classes in the past, you know a lot of times I don't prepare, and I didn't prepare anything for tonight. I figured what we would do tonight is a recap, kind of catch everybody up with what we've done and where we've been, what we've learned up until now, talk a little bit about what is, okay? Like to start off, the purpose of these classes is to not only give you a little bit of knowledge that you can, well, is this better? All right, I'll try to speak up so you guys can hear me. Can everybody hear me? I speak like this? Okay. All right, the purpose of these classes, the reason why I'm doing these, why we put these together, is to get a little bit of knowledge out there so that you guys can not only get yourselves out of any predicaments or situations you may have, but so that you may also start to focus out on the community and give back and create something better. Something that we talk about a lot in these classes is responsibility, and how this knowledge comes with a high level of responsibility. Okay? There is no, you don't want to use this knowledge for selfish reasons. Okay? As you'll see, and as we demonstrate in a lot of what we have learned, is that everything's universal law. Well, that's the word I like to put on it. But no matter what your religious or spiritual belief system is, every single one of them talks about the energy that you put back is what, the energy that you put out is what comes back. Okay, is there anybody in here that would disagree with that concept? No? Okay. So, when you are putting out or giving away with the expectation or the condition of getting something in return, that's selfish reasons. And you'll start to see things blow up in your face when you start to give that way. Okay? I know a lot of you may be new to some of these concepts. Some of you have already gotten returns and things like that based on some of the technologies we've discussed. Okay? But it's what you do with that once you've gotten it that's going to really put you into harmony or balance with the world. Okay? Sharing this information is good, provided that when you share it, you also give it in such a way that you convey the message that this is something that requires responsibility. Okay? Being responsible is the most important thing when using these concepts and these processes and procedures that we discuss. Now, being responsible is also covers the way that you act with people, the way that what your intention is when you speak to people, when you act with people, when you interact with people. Okay? When you may, some of you, and I've gone through this personally, you may be confronted and challenged on your position by agents of the government, the Treasury Department, IRS, CID. Anyone not know who CID is? Okay, that's the Criminal Investigation Division of IRS. Accountants with guns. Okay? So keep that in mind, because your intention in dealing with them is what's going to determine what comes of that situation. If your intention is to obstruct, delay, avoid responsibility when dealing with these people, then the hammer will come slamming down on you. If your intention is to assist, to bring a solution, if your intention is love, I know this is a hard concept to get, especially in dealing with the IRS, but if your intention is love, truly unconditional love, that, hey, these are human beings, just like you. There is no us and them, okay? There is just us. Okay? When you start to create a divide, a separation, you start to judge based on their job, based on their words, based on anything that you make judgments about. You can make judgments about their clothes. But that's taking a position. And here we're going to talk about being creditors. Okay? A creditor never takes a position. You may have heard creditors ask questions, debtors make statements. Okay? A debtor makes statements because he takes a position. When you make a statement, you're taking a position. When you ask a question, you're coming from infinite possibilities. You're not necessarily taking a position. And I don't mean just asking a question, just like making one up, but actually asking a question that leads you into some sort of solution, some sort of resolution. Not just asking a question to be asking a question. You know, they ask, what's your name? Well, what's your name? You know, that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is being in such a way that you're always questioning whether you're going to be taking a position. And to avoid taking a position, what question may you ask that will uncover maybe the other party's position? Because if you start to hold up the mirror to the people that you're interacting with, always being in the question, and this just isn't, and I'm not talking about government agents right now. I'm talking about everyone in your life. If you do this with everyone, because that's the best practice. You want to do well when you get confronted by a judge, a prosecutor, a IRS agent, Treasury agent, FBI agent, police officer. You want to do well when you're dealing with those people? Well, practice with the people in your life. When somebody confronts you on something, makes statements about you, challenges you in such a way that you automatically get defensive. If you got defensive, you took a position. You're making up that whatever they're saying has some validity to it. Is there anyone here that would agree with me if I called you a piece of crap? Okay, there's a couple. So you're taking a position, right? Now, you can either take offense to it, get defensive about it, or ask the question, is this about me? Or is this about a position that this person is taking on me? A judgment that they may be making? And what question can you ask this person to kind of hold up the mirror and see where they really stand? Because if you ask the right question, it's going to uncover their position. Okay? And as a creditor, you don't want to take a position. You want to be always coming from infinite possibilities. Now, in my point of view, my belief is that anytime you get two or more people interacting, you have a commercial situation. Commerce is happening. Whether or not money is exchanging hands, whether or not services are being provided, anytime you have two people interacting, there's a commercial situation there. There's a creditor and there's a debtor. Now, if we look at it from the spiritual point of view, the debtor, again, would be the one who makes statements, takes a position, and does not forgive debts against him, or debts that he may hold over others, or his own debts. Does anyone know what the word sin translates to in commerce? What would it be if we were to translate sin? It's a debt, right? Didn't Jesus, and again, I'm not religious, and I'm not trying to put any kind of religious point of view on you, because you'll hear me talk about Buddha too. You'll hear me talking about all religions. I don't particularly belong to any of them, but there is an infinite amount of wisdom found in all of them. Okay, and one of the concepts of Christianity is that Jesus died on the T-chart, those of you who are familiar with accounting, in order to pay your debts in advance. He prepaid your debt, your sin. Now, if you cannot forgive the debtors in your life, do not expect forgiveness for your debts. And that goes both ways, sin and debt. And at the same time, you cannot really, truly be a creditor until you're able to forgive yourself of your own debt and sin. You need to be able to come from a clean place, no position. If I'm always in the now, in the question, whatever came from the past doesn't mean anything. I can make up judgments, I can take positions on it. But that's a debtor mentality. If I'm truly going to be a creditor, I need to be able to leave everything that's not in the now away. I need to let it fall away. I'm not going to make up anything about it. I'm not going to take any position on it. I need to be able to forgive myself and forgive those in my life. Okay? These concepts, these processes, these procedures that we are going to be discussing over the next 12 weeks, if you do not get the spiritual side of this, if you are not coming from being a creditor, then a lot of this will blow up in your face. I can't even tell you how many times someone has got themselves into a situation taking on a process or a procedure that they did not understand and they did not want to take responsibility for. And the minute they got challenged, called me up. Brandon, you said this and this happened. Oh my God, what am I going to do? Is that being responsible? So take that into consideration, because guess what? I get way too many phone calls and way too many emails to save any of you. I'm not here to be your savior. What I'm here to do is show you how you can be a savior. How when you are ready to forgive yourself of the debts and sins of your past and come from infinite possibilities in the now, and forgive others of their debts and sins and come from infinite possibilities in the now, that you can be the savior and create a world that you want. And if you're coming from the heart and unconditional love, think of the possibilities of what we can create. Especially when you guys start to see that there's processes and procedures out there that money is not an issue. The number one fear that holds everyone where they're at. Who here is content with their life exactly where it's at? You lie. You lie because you would not be here if you were. Okay? Now get truthful with yourself, because I'm here to tell you, you'll never be content. That's not the point. Even when you figured out all the money thing and you're like, okay, fine, cool, no more fear about scarcity. I can live in abundance. Guess what? You're still not going to be content. You will never be content. The day you're content is the day you die. You're gone. You're content. No further drive to live because you've achieved or reached something. And I'm here to tell you, being a creditor has nothing to do with ever achieving anything. You will never achieve being a creditor. There will never be a time in your life where you will not be a debtor. You will always have that. You will always be in debt. You will always create debt and thereby create a situation where you can come to it with a resolution and a solution and set it off. Whether through commercial processes and procedures or through your own heart and way of being, setting off the debts and liabilities of yourself, your neighbors, your relatives. That's what's possible. So, the most important thing that you can get out of the next 12 weeks is being responsible, realizing that you're never going to be content, and realizing that you have absolute power and control to create the world that you want. Like I said, I'll show you how scarcity is a farce. It's a myth. And that fear of scarcity, once you get this, you can leave it in the past. It's no longer going to affect you moving from now. And how many people feel that maybe the idea of not having enough has held you back from doing things that could benefit your community, your world? I'll say community, but every time I say community, really, we live in a world community now. We have worldwide communication at our fingertips, at the snap of a finger. There we go. An example of it right now. So, this is our community. The world is our community. Okay? And I know some of the people in here, I don't know how many, may be coming from, and maybe some on the phone as well, may be coming from that a place or a belief that there are forces, dark forces in the world who are working against you. And watch out for the one world order and the new world government because it's bad. Okay? We're here to talk about what is. There may be a world government on the horizon, but guess what? It's because you want it. Everything in this world is a reflection of you. You see war in the world, you got war inside of you. You see poverty, it's because you have scarcity. Okay? So everything that you see is always a reflection of you. The world government is coming. Is it good? Is it bad? No. It just is. You can make a judgment, you can take a position. But in reality, it is not bad and it is not good. It is not right and it is not wrong. Those are judgments. Those are things you make up about everything in your life. You could say, oh, my sister, she's bad because she does these things. My friend, he's a jerk because he does these things or because he said those things. No, he just said those things. It's neutral. You make up good, bad, right, wrong. That's taking a position. Total debtor. Okay? So, before we, like I said, I don't think we're going to probably get into many concepts tonight. Maybe I'll do a little bit of the T-charts. And love T-charts. I'm always drawing my T-charts. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about, here we go. We'll actually take a spiritual concept off the T-chart, and understanding it can take us into understanding what we will be discussing when it comes to the banking system. Because the banking system, it isn't good, it isn't bad, it isn't right, it isn't wrong. It just is. And it is in such a way that it perfectly reflects universal law. Everything we've created does. It's like in our infinite wisdom, we can't get away from it. I'm not saying that it was the intention of the people who created the banking system to get you to return all your funds to you. I'm not saying they did that intentionally. But they did set it up in such a way that the infinite wisdom of human beings, through their connection to the source, whether you want to call it God, whether you want to call it the no thing, whether you want to call it the universe, whether you want to call it energy, whatever you want to call it, the source operates under infinite wisdom. You see it in everything we do. Every piece of art, every television show, every movie. I can't not see it anymore. Everything I look at that we do, that we create, we're constantly showing ourselves, holding up mirrors, saying, hey, look, isn't this great? This is exactly what is going on. This is exactly how things work. And we've encoded it into our legal system, into our economic system. It's there. It works beautifully. It is perfectly harmonious. It is perfectly just. So, the T-chart. On the T-chart, you have the asset side, left-hand side of the T-chart. On the right-hand side, you have the liability side. Okay? Now, we were talking about giving from the heart. What usually comes after giving, or is a direct result of giving? Almost like you can't separate them. Receiving. Is receiving the same as taking? No. So, if T-chart 1 here represents myself, and T-chart 2 over here represents one of my brothers or sisters. Okay. And I give something, or not necessarily a thing, but I just give, whether it's love, consideration, communication. It's funny, I used to be a bartender years and years and years ago. And I used to make a lot of money as a bartender. And my secret was I talked and I listened. Because most of the people coming into a bar, that's all they want. Someone to talk to and someone to listen to them. And when you actually listen to what they're saying, really listen from the heart, get a lot out of those communications. Okay, so I give of myself to person B. I'll be person A. Although most of the time people call me B. So, I give from my assets here. I've got some assets, and we'll give it a number. And I give some of my assets over here to B. Now, since B was just in receipt, we could say that B now has a liability because they've received something. They've received something that wasn't there originally, whether it was the consideration, something physical, something non-physical. So we'll give person B a liability here. But because the asset that they received is there too, they're really balanced. They've got a zero balance in their account. Okay? And something you'll find with the double entry bookkeeping system, this is a perfect reflection of universal law. Double entry bookkeeping says there's harmony. Harmony is balance. So B is in balance. Okay? Now let's say this over here, this T-chart, what is it called in the Bible? The Book of Deeds? Some of you who are more into the New Age, you've heard of the Akashic records? Akashic records? Okay? It's kind of like a recording system of everything that happens. And those of you who are religious, you've heard, St. Peter, he's got a book. If you're a Christian, he's got a book and he's keeping a list. All the good, all the bad. Those of you who may participate in the ancient Egyptian religions, it's Horus and Set. They act as the prosecuting and defense attorney at the time of your death in front of Osiris the judge. Christian system could be the same. Satan would be, or Lucifer would be the prosecuting attorney. Jesus would be your defense attorney. And Jehovah, or God, whatever you want to call it, would be the judge. Okay, so we've got a little bit of balance over here. Now, the Book of Deeds, or Akashic records, or whatever, we're going to say that this kind of keeps track of everything that happens out here when there's giving and receiving. Okay? Now, because I gave without expectation of receiving, I didn't give in order to receive. I just gave. And I didn't necessarily receive anything. But have you guys ever heard the term, receiving is in the giving? Like, doesn't it feel good to give? Okay, well then you're all receiving when you give. Some of you even are takers when you give, because you give intentionally to receive. You go out and you buy tons of Christmas presents for everybody, because you love to give, and it feels good when you give. Okay, so we're going to say that because I gave, I now have a liability. Okay, but because I was the original source of the giving, okay, so I'm balanced. Person B is balanced. Book of Deeds over here is going to record a transaction. And the Book of Deeds is always going to record where did the transaction originate? Where did the energy, the love, the thing, the no thing originate? Okay, so it's going to hold up here a 1,000-unit asset and a 1,000-unit liability, because it has to balance to 0 too. One of the terms you'll hear us mention in here, which is going to be representative of the inner workings of the economic system and how we can claim what we claim, you'll hear the term escrow account. That's your escrow account. The escrow account represents the originator's energy. If I gave 1,000 units of energy, well, up here in this escrow account was recorded the energy that I gave. And it's just being held by a third party. Now, because someone else is holding this, or someone else is recording this, and I was the originator, ultimately, in the end, what happens to these deeds, or these units, or these things that have been recorded of what you were the original issuer of? Don't they come back? Shouldn't everything make a full circle? Doesn't that seem to be harmonious and balanced, kind of be in sync with universal laws, spiritual laws, however you may know them? So everything comes back eventually. So this energy will return. So even though there was receiving and the giving, something out here that will return on its own. How many of you have ever heard of the law, the universal law of compensation? Okay, some of you. What you give unconditionally comes back tenfold. How many have heard of fractionalizing? This is an act that the banks do. How much can they fractionalize? 10 times. Okay? Again, in perfect sync with universal law. Okay? So, eventually, this, which is a record or an escrow of what I gave, will return to me. And in the processes and procedures that we're going to discuss in regards to dealing with different tax forms and whatnot, what you're doing is recognizing this system, because this is how it's happening in the banking system. When you create, did you know that you are the source of all the money? That since they took away gold and silver, the only source of new money is you. Your signature or authorization creates all the money. And because they can't rely on you to create enough for industry, what they do is they fractionalize what you create times 10. So you get the benefit of everything you create times 10. I mean, how great is it that we have running water, that we have sewage and electricity? Wow. Like, I really wouldn't probably be digging life as much if I had to shit in the yard and live by candlelight. It's really cool that I get to go to the bathroom indoors and boom, flush the toilet and it's gone out of the house. I don't have to deal with it anymore. And it's great that I've got light, the flick of a switch. And then I've got energy to cook my food with. I don't have to chop down wood think of it. We've got an entire commercial system that will provide you with anything you could possibly need. Everything you could possibly need. That's your energy being multiplied times 10. The global community, hard at work. So, here is a basic transaction. You see that there was a source of the energy. The energy went out, and the energy that went out was recorded or held by an uninterested party. See, this party up here has no interest. These two parties have an interest. You guys will hear that word a lot. When I say interest, I'm not talking about a usury tax. Who knows what a usury tax is? That's on your savings account. How many of you have savings accounts? They earn interest. That's a usury tax. The bank is paying you a tax because you have interest in those funds. Those are your funds, but you're giving the bank permission to trade those funds. Anyone know the difference between an interest-bearing account and a non-interest-bearing account? You don't, right? That's one. You don't get a usury tax. What else?
One on the private side and one's on the public side?
Not necessarily. They could be.
Do you access to the funds anytime you want?
Both of them do. One's backed by FDIC. Anyone know what FDIC is? Anyone not know what FDIC is? FDIC is the insurance, right? A guarantee. Now, why would they need to guarantee money? What are they doing with that interest-bearing money? They're using it. They're trading it on the market. They're doing various things with it. And because you're allowing them to use it, they have to put up an insurance policy on that money. Not only do they have to put up an insurance policy on that money, they have to pay you a tax for the right to use it. When I say interest, that's what most people think of. But when I say interest, 99.9% of the time what I'm talking about is a claim. See, I created this energy here. Thereby, I have an interest or a claim to that energy. If this energy is held over here, and I have a claim to it or an interest in it, I can claim it back at any time. And in fact, that's what completes the cycle. What happens if we don't claim this? All of a sudden, we start to get outrageous amount of numbers sitting over here which no one has a claim to and no one has claimed back. Now, if we convert this little model here into units known as US dollars, does anyone have an idea of how much has been created that has not been claimed back? About 9 to 11 trillion. Anyone know what the debt? It's over 11 trillion, right? Okay. So there's $11 trillion that we have created. And as debtors, we never claimed back. We never claimed a return of that interest. Now, that's what's created the current situation. How many people have issues with China owning the United States? Okay. Why does China own the United States? They bought the debt. What's that make them? Creditors. Creditors control. Debtors are owner-operators. How many of you have title to your car? Notice how I said title. How many of you have equitable title to your car? All of you have. I mean, those of you who have paid it off have an equitable title to your car. What is equitable title? It means you could sell it and you can get the money from it. Do you control that vehicle? Anyone in here control their vehicle? No. Can the state at any time pull you over and take your car? Yeah, because they have legal title. They are the creditor. So they control. Owner-operators have equitable interest. Creditors have legal title or interest. Okay? So we have what's called a split title system. Those who are creditors hold the legal title to things. They control. Right now, China is our biggest creditor. So they have quite a high degree of control over what happens in the United States. If we want to be responsible, What is something we can do to reverse that situation? Buy the debt. Did you know that that was possible? Yeah, buy treasury bonds, buy municipal bonds. All of a sudden, now you own the debt. And all the money that the government collects from people, via taxes, via federal lawsuits, guess where that money goes? Pay the bondholders. Yeah, to China right now. But eventually, if we buy up all the debt, the people, all of a sudden the control will shift. See, debtors always sit and always take a position. They're always victims. They're victims to the government. They're victims to China. They're victims to anything they can make up in their head that they're a victim to. They're victims to the CHP officer who just gave them a ticket for speeding. How dare he pull me over doing 70 miles an hour on a freeway? And you'll make up all kinds of shit and take positions. He's a dick. He's an ass. Right? You'll make up all kinds of things. Is it true? No. It's just what you make up. So, if we want to control, we must become the creditors. How many of you are aware that this country has been a country of debtors since 1789? How many were aware that we were given a republic in 1782 or 1776, really? Yeah. You know how long that republic lasted? 7 years. 1782 to 1789, we had a republic. But there was a debt due. And when we refused to pay the debt, that was in 1811. That's when we refused to secure the debt. See, we created the Bank of the United States, the first central bank, about 1791. It had a 20-year charter on it. When the 20 years was up, Congress said, we don't need a central bank. They got rid of the central bank. That would have been in 1811. Anyone know what happened the following year? The War of 1812. We were invaded. The last time we were invaded by a foreign power. They burned the White House and took control of the federal courts. Why would they take control of the federal courts? Control the titles. They said, you're not going to let us secure the debt in our security interest, which was the central bank. You're going to take that away from us. Well, we got to come over and we're going to have to secure the debt. So those who think that the solution to all your problems is getting rid of the Federal Reserve, you're going to have a much bigger problem. Did you know that the Chinese army, standing army, they have more people in their infantry than we have in our entire population? They would have no problem invading this country.
They tried to do that with Russia and it didn't quite work, so I don't know.
Was there a debt?
I don't think so.
Because I can guarantee you that if we refuse to pay the debt, they will have the power of every nation on their side. Because everything is creditor-debtor relationships. Why do you think we were allowed to go in and create all the havoc we did in Iraq? We're representing the creditors. Okay? We represent the creditors. So every nation is going to be okay with it. Their people may not be okay with it. I mean, our people weren't okay with it. There's a lot of people who aren't okay with the idea of us just invading a foreign nation for its oil. But guess what? What you think doesn't really matter. Because there's creditors and there's debtors. And you're a bunch of debtors. Who gives a shit what a bunch of debtors think? Okay? That's the reality, unfortunately. Can it be changed? Yeah. We can not be victims and choose to take responsibility. Is there anybody here who thinks that we do not have the power to completely reverse the situations we see in this world? Okay. So when we get into the whole banking scheme and how things work, this little system will make sense. And like I said, it's universal law. It's nothing extreme. It's nothing out of the ordinary. It makes perfect sense that the banking system works the way that it works. And it makes perfect sense that creditors control. Because if you look at all the spiritual laws as they've been laid out in all the religions, the creditor controls. And actually, in most religious stories, the debtor is usually a slave. Did you know? So most of you are aware that there was a republic and a democracy, and that the republic went bankrupt in 1789. How many of you know that there are two constitutions? There was the original Constitution, which secured the debt. Then we got a new federal constitution in 1860s. What changed in the 1860s? Civil War, states' rights, state sovereignty. What happened to state sovereignty? They lost it. How did they lose it? Well, they had signed on the Constitution. They had secured a debt that they refused to pay, and a bunch of states decided they wanted to secede without paying the debt. Have you guys heard about, Texas, Vermont? There's like 4 or 5 states right now talking about seceding from the Union. You think that's going to go over well? Because I guarantee you they haven't paid their debt. How many of you have heard that the Hawaiian Islands are now a sovereign nation? Yeah. They have their own constitution and everything. The Kingdom of Hawaii. Is there still a state of Hawaii? Oh, yeah. And how long will there be a state of Hawaii? Until they pay their debt. So the Hawaiians, just because they created a new sovereign nation, didn't get rid of the state of Hawaii. Because the state of Hawaii exists to secure a debt. And until that debt is paid, there will be the state of Hawaii. I don't know. Start with Hawaii. Start with Hawaii. Everyone move to Hawaii. Yeah, because I imagine California. Actually, California could probably. Well, it really, if you think about it, California is one of those states where we have everything. Like, we have enough resources, abundant resources, to not only take care of everyone within the state of California, but really to have quite a trade revenue as well. Yeah, we could put out enough output as far as services, food, products, manufacturing. We could become a powerful sovereign nation if we paid our debts. Did you know that the United States, that was created by the Constitution, that's not a state? You know, a state doesn't quite mean what... most Americans, because we grew up with 50 states, we think a state is something subservient to a nation. A nation is a state. What's Hillary Clinton's title? Secretary of State. It's not Secretary of Nation. It's Secretary of State. The United States was originally a society, an organization, a union of nation states. Each state was its own sovereign entity who got together and decided, we're going to create this federal entity to have a military, to provide for the common welfare, defense, and to secure our liability or our liberties. Sorry, liabilities. Same thing though. So we've secured our liberty. The Constitution was a debt security. Who has the original? Anyone know? I don't know. But I can guess, since the person who paid our debt was the King of England. Isn't that funny? We fought a war against the King of England. We incurred a debt, and he came in and said, hey, you want me to pay that debt for you? Because he knew creditors control. It was an easy decision for him. He's all, 13 mil. Yeah, I'll pay that. Now he's got control. So, something, again, when we talk about the moral and ethic points of being a creditor, if you truly want to create something better, you're going to take this energy that you are able to harness and pay debts. Pay the debts of your brothers and sisters. Pay the debts of your city and county and state. Pay the debts of your nation. You can pay all those debts by just buying bonds. You buy the bonds, you earn the revenue from their collection. Did you know that most of the revenue earned on municipal and treasury bonds is not taxable? Who does the IRS work for? The creditors. And if you're a creditor, who's the IRS working for? You. So guess what? They're collecting taxes to give to you. That's why a lot of those bonds don't have tax liabilities attached to them. Alrighty, we're coming up on 8:30. Did we want to do a break? 8:30?
Brandon, can I get a little history on your background? I don't know anything really about your first time Trustees and why you decided to study it in such detail.
Okay, no, I'm not an Aquarius. I'm a bull-headed Taurus. Alrighty. My history and background, really not a lot. I have no college degrees. I mean, I made it through high school pretty good. And I attended a couple years in college. But my entire life, I've had a drive to understand everything. That's just how I am. It's how I'm wired, so to speak. So I can't not study things. Whenever a new subject is presented to me, I study it thoroughly and completely. And I don't take any one person's word for anything, as none of you should take my word for anything. I'll be the first to tell you, I don't know shit. Okay? I don't know anything. I'm the guy who knows he knows nothing. Okay? Yeah. That's us, dude. So, my history and background is, I've done computer programming. I've run a couple different businesses and things like that. I don't think I've actually been an employee since probably 96. I worked for I think the last job I had was working for a distribution company. I set up their entire system as far as incoming, outgoing materials and warehousing and shipping and receiving. And then after that, I created a couple of computer-based companies, internet-based companies, things like that. But like I said, I've always been driven to understand things. I mean, outside of economics, I mean, you give me the subject of carpentry. For years, I was convinced I was going to be a general contractor, carpenter, roofer, because it excited me. It was a new subject that I had not been exposed to before. And so, I mean, just everything about it, especially the science of it, the geometry of it, all the different elements that went into it, it really intrigued me. And that's how everything is for me. Like even religion. Like I decided, well, I'm not going to take one religion's point of view. It was a natural drive for me to go and seek out every single religion and see, what do they got to say? What do they got to say? If I had to name a favorite, I'd say it'd probably be like Zen Buddhism. Like, I love that because there's no thing. There's no attachment. Really, when you get Zen Buddhism, you would never call yourself a Buddhist because you get that there is no attachment, there is no thing, that you can always come from infinite possibility in any moment. And that, again, it's not the only one I like, but it's one of my favorites.
Where do I find this 1860 Constitution that you're talking about?
It's the current Constitution. It's actually probably in the U.S. Code. It's your current Constitution. The only difference between the Constitution of the 1860s and the original Constitution, the original Constitution got up to 13 amendments, and then it ceased to exist. Does anyone know what the original 13th Amendment was? The Anti-Shyster Amendment. It's no titles of nobility. Okay? But when they created the democracy, which is a military-run government, on top of the republic, because the republic was insolvent. It was bankrupt. So they created this military democracy to go on top of it. And this military democracy, how do things work in the military? Rank, right? If I'm a general, I have a title of nobility. But even private, that's a title of nobility. Well, guess what? You're all privates called U.S. citizens. That's your title of nobility. So because they were going to give you a benefit and a privilege, they had to get rid of the old 13th Amendment. So, what's the new 13th Amendment? No involuntary servitude. So what does that mean about the republic? It means that there's still involuntary servitude in the republic, which is what creates the international bankruptcy system. I'm not saying you can be held involuntarily as a slave anymore because the Universal Declaration of Human Rights got rid of that, which was put out by the United Nations. Okay? There is no more involuntary servitude of individuals. However, a nation or a state or any dead entity can be an involuntary servitude to another party, meaning the creditor-debtor. See, that's why if you try to secede from the Union, they have every right and power to come in and force you into servitude. Because in the Republic, inside of private international law, entities have that right to hold you in bondage. Not you as an individual, but your entities. See, all entities are dead things, dead on arrival. They don't live. A U.S. citizen is not a living thing. It's funny. Law actually got really spiritual about the 1600s. They realized even your body is just a vessel. That who you truly are is unseen, is eternal. And therefore, they can't hold you to anything. You are part of the Creator. You have creative energy. And because of that, they recognized that in order for there to be order, they created a system by which we act through entities, legal identities. See, you may think your name is whatever, whether it's all uppercase, all lowercase, Egyptian hieroglyphics, whatever. That's not who you are. That's a legal identity. That's a vessel. It represents a vessel. Are we getting short on time, Max? It looks like it's blinking. 5 minutes? Okay.
Is the entity the same as the straw man?
You've heard it, how many have heard the term straw man? That is an entity. Okay? But whether you're talking about all capital letters or uppercase and lowercase letters, They're both legal identities. They both represent a vessel. The body is a vessel. All documents in commerce are vessels. This is a vessel. It's a vessel in the sea of space. Okay? And therefore, we converted over from what was known as law of the land, the Old Testament law, where an eye for an eye. That law was done away with, so to speak, or became secondary to the law of vessels, or the law governing the interaction between vessels, which is the law merchant, or the law of the sea. It's the law of the sea that gave you negotiable instruments. Negotiable instruments did not exist until the law of the sea existed. Negotiable instruments include checks, credit cards, debit cards, money orders, bills of exchange, such as Federal Reserve notes. That's, that stuff you carry around in your pocket. It's green. Has dead people on it. Okay? Those are all negotiable instruments. And the right to deal, and the fact that you deal in negotiable instruments means that you know that you're operating under the law merchant, and therefore are in contract in everything that you do. Contract has nothing to do with the signature on a piece of paper. Did you guys know that? Contract is purely by performance. The fact that you may sign a document that says, here's the terms of the contract or the agreement, and we're signing on here to agree to that, that's the memorialization of the contract. The contract is, for instance, I'll give you a contract that you enter into all the time. You walk into a restaurant, you grab a menu, you order from the menu. Guess what? You're in a contract. You will pay for that food, or you won't, and that's called a dishonor. But the fact is, you ordered from the menu. Thereby, your performance dictates that you agreed to the terms of the contract. You agreed that at the end of the meal, you were going to be presented with a check, and you were going to discharge the liability on that check. That was the contract. We need to change? Why don't we go ahead and change? We still got people on the phone? Sweet. Here, you guys make sure. No, we're going to take a break in a few minutes. Make sure, you guys, let's pass the microphones around. I don't want to get dead space for those who may be listening on the phone or for those who may download the audios and videos later. They can't hear? Did I mute myself? It's real garbled. Are you getting garbled audio? No? You sure? Hello? I should have paused. Sorry. Well, I don't know if there's much else I can do on this. All right. If we, I want to do a break. Okay, hold on. Can you pass this back? Oh, you have one too, right?
Did you? Is it cool to talk?
Yeah. No, go ahead.
All right. So regarding back, I think it was Easter when the vessels were hijacked, and or was it? There were some ships hijacked.
I don't watch the news all the time. Somalia, the Somalian pirates. See, I only know that because of South Park. I do watch South Park.
No, I was just wondering if you had anything to say about that, because I just thought it was really interesting how it was on Easter that it was brought into the news, if I recall, that the ships were being hijacked and the vessel, they actually.
What was the vessel? Where was it from? There's a U.S. vessel?
Yeah.
U.S. vessel hijacked by Somali pirates?
Yep.
I haven't heard about it, but do I have any input on it?
Yeah, no.
No,
Right.
not really.
Bottom line is that this law merchant or law of the sea is governed by admiralty law,
Yes.
controlled by the military,
Yes.
and that's why you see in all courts of law a gold-fringed, gold-braided flag with an eagle, which is at the discretion of the President of the United States,
You may see a spear
acting as commander-in-chief,
or a ball. Yes.
or a ball.
Yeah. Yeah, commander-in-chief, he's the head of the military. And that's of the democracy. That's why a non-U.S. citizen like Barack Obama can be president. It has nothing to do with the old rules of the republic. We're not operating as a republic anymore. The creditors choose who they want to lead. Can you pass the microphone back? Can you pass the microphone back? Turn it on.
I was wondering where the money comes from that's in the escrow account.
Where the money comes from that's in an escrow
Yeah.
account?
From us.
You.
Okay. So, but who's the person that we're giving the money to? They get the money too. So, I'm a little
Okay.
confused, and I know it's probably advanced stuff. But
Yeah, well, we haven't really gotten into that yet, but
Yeah.
you write a check, right?
Yeah.
And you give the check to Bob.
Okay.
Okay. Your assumption is that that check made funds flow from your bank to Bob's bank.
Yeah, that's
That's not what happened.
okay.
Bob endorsed the check and deposited it.
Okay.
Bob's bank got funds from the Federal Reserve to put a liability over there. See, liability in bank accounts, the liability is your balance in the account. Okay? The assets are everything that you endorse and deposit. Those are negotiable instruments. Those are
Okay.
assets that
All
you
right.
created the money with. So when Bob endorsed the check, he created money. Okay? But the Federal Reserve gets notice, and they go, well, we had to credit these guys over here, so we're going to go back over to this guy and tell his bank, hey, you need to debit. You need to debit your deposits. So they go, okay, we're going to debit this guy's account since he's the one who created the money. What happens in double entry bookkeeping every time there's a debit? There's a corresponding credit to balance it off. That credit goes up here in the escrow account. Okay? So they were required, and see, these funds in escrow, they cannot fractionalize. They can only fractionalize what's on deposit. See, these are the funds on deposit, the deposit accounts. They can fractionalize that money. They cannot fractionalize this money. So when the Federal Reserve told them, hey, debit your deposits, they debited your account and credited this escrow account. Now, you created the instrument that created this money, right? Do you not have an interest or a claim to those funds? Especially considering there was a debit on an account where you had an asset. Because remember, initially, the asset is what gave you those funds to be debited. And the asset was an endorsed check. You created money by endorsing the check and depositing it. That's an asset for the bank. The liability is what goes into your public side of the account. The public side of the account is a liability for who? The bank. Liability for the bank. That's what shows on your statement, the balance on the liability side of the account. This asset side of the account, if it's an interest-bearing account, could have at least $250,000 in it from the moment it's opened. Where did that $250,000 come from? Well, it represents the FDIC insurance, but it came from your agreement, your signature on opening the account. Just like a credit card. A credit card company never gave you a dime. You signed an agreement, a credit agreement, which created the funds that are sitting there that get sent out from a bank every time you use the card. And what do? They withhold your interest each time you use the card, and they allege a liability based on that withholding. They say, hey, you created money, so we're going to withhold some of your interest and put it up here in escrow. Because if we just let you guys, a bunch of debtors, create any amount of money you want, we'd be paying billions of dollars for a loaf of bread because we'd just be creating it all day long, whatever we wanted to create. So there had to be a check put in place. The check that was put in place is that you're blocked from creating money. That you cannot create money unless you go through an intermediary, like a bank. And each time you create it, they're required by their boss to debit your account. But at the same time, when they debit this account, they need to credit another account. That's double entry bookkeeping. Every credit, every debit, there's a credit somewhere in the books. If there's a credit here, there's a debit somewhere. If there's a debit here, there's a credit somewhere. Those of you who are accountants know that. Can you pass the microphone back? Do you have a microphone?
When you talk about the dead entity, what are you referring to?
The dead entity? Yes. I can be referring to a multitude of things. The United States is a dead entity. The fact that they use past tense words, even. Do you know what it was called before it was called the United States? The Union, which is a present tense word. That's a living thing. But the united is always in the past. It's always past tense. It's always dead. Dead entities could be U.S. citizens because it's a contract entity. It is not a living, breathing thing. The living, breathing thing is not a legal entity. It may represent legal entities because when they call you in a court of law, they may say, defendant so-and-so, Brandon Adams, defendant Brandon Adams here. Now, they're not talking about me. They're talking about an entity which I represent. And I represent that entity in front of that court. See, this goes back to the law merchant, law of vessels. How do you get the captain to show up? Arrest the vessel. Because he's going to show up. The guy in control will show up when you arrest the vessel. So, what vessel are they going to arrest? Well, it could be the body. Body's one vessel. Could be documents. Could be a vehicle. That's a vessel. And when they arrest the vessel, who shows up? Captain. Captain shows up. Hey, what are you doing with my vessel? That's what's going on. It's the law. All these dead entities could also be called vessels.
Why do you say a U.S. citizen is a dead entity?
Why do I say that?
Yeah.
Because it's created out of contract. You signed an SS5 that created it. SS5 or birth certificate. One of those documents created the U.S. citizen. U.S. citizen is a title of nobility. It's a fiction. It's a fiction of law or a procedural phantom. Look those up. Black's Law Dictionary.
Are you referring to a corporation and equating that to an individual?
No, I didn't say, a U.S. citizen isn't necessarily an individual. A U.S. citizen is an entity, just like a corporation is an entity. There are foundational documents for that citizen. Doesn't a corporation always have articles of incorporation? Right? Or some sort of registration? They registered the U.S. citizen. See, you may equate that because it has a name that you like to respond to. Let's say your name is Chuck Jones, and they called Chuck Jones. You go, oh, that's me. You automatically assume that some legal identity has something to do with you, but I'm here to say you're a creative force in the universe. You're part of God. I and the Father are one. I don't care what your religious background is. That's all of them. They all equate you as being a part of the Creator. As a part of the Creator, you're not any identity. See, the power you have is to make distinctions. What is this? Wrong. Wrong. That's what it is. It's that. Now, I can make a distinction and I can say it's a pen. I can make a distinction and say I am Brandon. But in fact, what's making the distinction? No, that's the distinction. Flesh and blood, I can identify that. It's right here. I've made a distinction. I've separated something from the whole. Okay? If God is that which cannot be distinguished. How many of you are familiar with the ineffable name? Anyone ever heard that term? No? You ever heard that term? Any Christians or Hebrew in here? Okay. Oh, yeah, we got one Christian in here. Okay. Okay. The ineffable name is the name of God. It is the unspeakable name. Why can you not speak God's name? It's not because it's taboo and he'll get pissed. You better not say his name. That's not what it is. It's as soon as you make a distinction, that ain't what he is. He's not that. That's a title. It's a legal identity. It's a fiction. It does not exist. It's that thing which makes distinction. Something in the background. I don't know what it is. It obviously lives in me because I can make distinctions all day long. But guess what? As soon as I make a distinction, that ain't me. Because I'm the source of something's the source of the distinctions. I could say, I'm my body. Nope. I just made a distinction. I can't be that. I'm my mind. Nope. Just separated myself from that thing. I'm the soul. Nope. Just made a distinction. Separated it from everything else. What's making the distinctions? That's what God is, and that's what you are. I and the Father are one. So I know this is a hard concept, and you may not agree. I'm not saying it's truth. I told you, I don't know shit. I told you that right at the beginning. But I do know that if I make a distinction, what's really making the distinction? It has to be something that can't be distinguished. That's just my understanding of how things operate. There's always a balance. If something is making a distinction and something is a distinction, there has to be something that's not a distinction. In Buddhism, they call it the no thing. Being emptiness, coming from emptiness, right? It's the no thing that all the things exist in. If these are all things, well, the no thing would be the white background, the board. But now I made a distinction out of that, so that ain't what it is either. Okay? As soon as you make a distinction and you separate, what is actually making the distinctions? What is actually doing the separating? What calls this a pen? What makes this a pen? The fact that you agree that it's a pen. You make a distinction. If you're from, what is the Spanish word for pen? Stilo? Pluma. Okay, so you come from Spain, this is a pluma. You come from France, it's a stilo. Not the same. Distinction, but no truth. Truth isn't in the arbitrary distinctions you give things and you make up. It just is. It is. Any distinction I make about it, or anything time I distinguish anything from anything else, I fictionalized it. I put it in time and space. Those things which are seen are temporal. Those things that are unseen are eternal. The things that you cannot distinguish are what's eternal. So you could say the soul's eternal, but you've just made a distinction. You've separated it, so it's not necessarily eternal. Do you have a microphone?
The new thing that they're exploring, this thing called dark matter, is really the body of God.
No, because they're making a distinction. They've said, oh yeah, there's matter and then there's the opposite of it. Oh, well, you made a distinction. If God's anything, He's in the background. He's the container. Have you ever heard I forget which astronaut, but one of the astronauts, after one of his trips out into space, I can't remember if it was one of the moon missions or not, but it was one of the astronauts in the 60s, 70s. It was Buzz Aldrin, said he saw God. Yeah, I think it's Ed Mitchell. It says, I've seen God. No? Nobody know the rest of the quote?
So you don't do anything, you just are, and so
Hold on. Let me finish my quote. I've seen God, and she's black and beautiful. What was he talking about? The womb. The grand womb of what contains all things. You can't really make a distinction of it. Actually, he said, she's black. Because just like the womb, the container, the thing that cannot be distinguished is what is in the background. Everything is created and springs and comes into being, but what is behind all of that? And that's the thing that makes distinctions. That's your connection to God. Your ability to make distinctions. Your ability to make up and create something like this. Now, what was your question?
So you don't do anything, you just are, and you. So what's the purpose
Look,
of
I'm doing something. See, I can do something.
So what's the purpose of all of this?
What's the purpose? What's your purpose? You choose your purpose. I'm not here to give you a purpose.
I'm just saying it's like if we cannot distinguish what we are, where we are, or what we do, we shouldn't label anything. So what
I'm not saying you shouldn't label it. Those labels come in handy. You know, if I didn't take the title of Brandon Adams and we just actually this goes back to South Park. There was a South Park episode where everything there were these aliens and they had one word for all nouns. I can't remember what the word was. I'm sure it was really funny. But let's say it was like snarf. And he's like, did you snarf the snarf into the snarf when I snarfed it? And they knew exactly what they were talking about. The kids from South Park are sitting there going, what the hell did you just say? But then Kyle caught on and he starts going, well, the snarf into the snarf, then the snarf to the snarf. And they're like, oh, okay. So labels come in handy for communication. It's when you get more than one person together. You're in commerce anyways. I'm not saying it's bad that we operate through dead entities, that we operate through these fictions. That's not a bad thing. It's not good. It's not bad. It's just what is. As soon as we create something, some kind of an agreement, some kind of a contract through our performance. Like right now, you're all here under a contract. You're sitting in these seats. I am performing my end of the contract. I'm making up a bunch of stupid shit, and you're here, all entertained, here to get something. I'm telling you, there's nothing to get, but you're here, and we're in a contract. And the contract is, you're going to sit there, you're going to ask questions, and for the most part, you're going to be orderly, and I'm going to sit up here and make up a bunch of shit, draw funny pictures and numbers, and that's the contract. And that's beautiful. There's nothing right or wrong about it. There's nothing good or bad about it. It just is. So the labels come in handy. I'm not saying they're bad. They come in handy. But what's making the labels? I'm just saying your true nature isn't anything that I can label. It's nothing I can put up here and go, oh, look, that's you. Or, that's you. I can't say that. Because in reality, that's just a body. Do you truly believe you're your body?
Sometimes.
It feels that way sometimes, huh? Have you ever felt outside of your body? Yeah. How many people dream? How many of you have dreams like mine where the body all of a sudden becomes totally useless? And you're like trying to run and it's just like, right? For some reason it ain't working. So I just started flying in all my dreams. I'm like, fuck this. It's so much easier than trying to run in my dreams. Running in my dreams always turns out bad.
Would you say it's accurate just to say I am, or is that another distinction?
I am, that's I am.
I am.
There may be another way of putting that. I am that I am, and I alls that I am. But I'm not saying there is a right or a wrong and that you can label it. That's the whole trick. You can't bring yourself out here and show me you. Because it's not your body, it's not your mind, it's not your brain. What, we cut open your head? Oh, look, there they are. Here's the nature of them. Here's where all that craziness came from. No, it's a device. Just like the heart is a device. Puts out a lot of energy, but it's just a device. It's an anatomical device. I use them. I use these things. They come in handy. I can throw stuff. I can run, at least when I'm not dreaming. So, to me, I feel like the captain of a vessel. Because I can move the vessel. I can do what I want with the vessel. I put clothes on the vessel. I label the vessel. But it's just a vessel. I have no confusion that at the time that the vessel and I are separated, that I'm going to be trapped in the vessel. That's what I believe death is. Death, to me, is separation of me from my vessel. My vessel no longer has a driving force behind it, so it just falls apart. Goes back where it came from, the earth. It's a bunch of earth. I'm a bag of water. Makes fitting that we operate under the law of the sea, right? 70% water. Go ahead.
Okay, so can you give us something that will...
Microphone, turn it on. Sorry.
Okay. Can you give us some information that would benefit us, or can you tell us how to put more dollars in our pocket?
Yeah, I can do that.
I mean, can we get to a bottom line, something that I could actually take, because I can't be here next week, and I mean, all this is really interesting, and it's really mind-blowing stuff. But I just wondered if there's something that we can do that would benefit. And, I believe in a we universe, that whatever I do, it's going to benefit whoever I'm participating with. And I think that's what we're moving towards. So I just wondered if you can give us something to benefit.
Okay, now there's a claim out there. Evidently, whatever I'm doing up here is not a benefit. So, anyway, do you have proof of claim?
A receipt.
Did she say something about a receipt? You have a receipt? Okay, so what were the terms of that receipt? Were there guarantees? I feel like I benefit no matter what I do. Like there's always something to learn. Like I said, I didn't want to actually get into processes and procedures tonight. But because this is a subject, that's why we didn't create a seminar. This topic is vast. It is way too huge for me to come up here and go, okay, here's how banking works. Now go out and start filling out tax forms to make this happen. We will discuss tax forms and things like that. But in reality, it's the concepts, the spiritual nature of what we're doing that I feel is the most important thing. So I'm not sitting up here talking about these things because for any other reason than I feel that it's something that needs to be said in order for us to build on this foundation. I don't want to write something down and give you an example of something, then have all of you go out there and get yourselves into trouble. Because if you don't understand what you're doing, it's just going to be trouble. So, and like I said, we've got 12 weeks. We will go into some pretty deep stuff as far as processes and procedures are concerned. You'll learn some amazing things that we've tried and tested.
So do you think, should we still have checking accounts and use credit cards and all that? I mean,
Until you've put yourself in a position to operate outside those things. Because it is possible to operate outside those things. In fact, you could be a creditor in commerce and operate strictly on the asset side of accounts. Remember, we were talking there's always an asset and a liability side to an account. Once you learn what we are, as a group, share on a regular basis as far as knowledge, that you can actually operate on this side of the account and never have a liability in the public. That means you won't have any accounts with any balances greater than zero, because your liability will always be zero in those accounts. But your assets in those accounts could be hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. And when you learn to operate on that side of the account, it's incredible what you can do, because everything you do is always benefit to the public, because you're always taking something from the asset side and discharging or setting off, better than discharge, because discharge just puts the debt off into the future. Like when you use Federal Reserve notes, you're just discharging a debt. You're not setting off a debt. See, because a Federal Reserve note is what? Debt. How the hell do you pay a debt with a debt? It's a promise to pay someday. Same with a check. Check's a promise to pay someday. Promissory note on a house, promise to pay someday. And then you go and you make payments with more debt. Like, oh, here, I'm gonna set off that debt with some more debt. No, you're not setting it off. You're discharging it. You're putting it off into a future date. All money is based on our faith, spirit, and energy. When you lack faith, when you cease to have faith in this system, that's when it starts to fall apart. I'm going to have to go back to South Park. Anybody seen Margaritaville? It's one of the newer episodes, yeah? What happened when the people lost their faith in the system, in the economic system?
One person became the savior and started paying everybody's debt.
Started paying everyone's debt, just like Jesus. Sacrificed his credit score. Kyle, what are you doing? You're going to ruin your credit. And he was a Jew, just like Jesus. It was Kyle. Kyle took his Platinum American Express and started paying the debts of everyone. And by paying off everyone's debts, they all of a sudden had faith in the system again and started spending money again. See? When the faith goes down, what do people do? They hoard their money. They're afraid to spend it. So they hold it off somewhere. And guess what? When we're all just holding on to it, not spending it, guess what? None of us are making money. Hello? How can that be the solution? Let's all stop spending. That'll make things better. I've even seen people get chastised on television for spending money. Because, oh, we're in these hard economic times. Simon shouldn't be spending $400 on a haircut. Really? Really? Does that make sense to anyone? Okay. I thought it was just me, but it seems that we're probably in agreement that not spending money is not the solution. And I'm here to show you how not only can you get every dime you've ever spent back, but by spending it again, you're going to be benefiting the system. If you get all your money back from 08, 07, and 06 that you spent in those years, and you hold on to that money, you're a debtor. You should stop practicing being a creditor, because you're not doing anyone any good. Maybe the bank, because the bank can fractionalize the money as you hold on to it. But in reality, not even the bank benefits as much as if you were to spend it all. Because you could bring in so much more. You could be creating so much in your society. Stop being a victim. Stop pointing the finger and saying, the government sucks. They don't have this and they don't have that and they're not giving us this and they're not giving us that. Take responsibility. Create the social programs you want in your community. You want there to be no homelessness in your community? Give them jobs. Build something. Create something. You want a green earth? Think of how many jobs you can create in making a green earth. And think of all the things people can do when they're no longer in fear of scarcity. When you're no longer coming from, there's not enough, and you're coming from abundance and possibility, then you can create whatever you want. We could create a phenomenal system, a system that takes care of our kids, that takes these communities that have been brought down. You know the communities I'm talking about, where you're afraid to go. You need to build something there. Build something great. Give them back their lives, because when you're coming from abundance, and money isn't the issue. Money is not an issue. So you could do what you love. I was talking to my friend this weekend. He's an artist. I mean, a profound artist. This guy can play guitar like nobody's business. He's one of the most gifted people I've ever met in my life. And he's struggling. If he knew this, he wouldn't be struggling, and he'd be able to perform his art all day long, every day. Taco Bell manager could live in a 5-bedroom house and support his whole family working at Taco Bell. If that's your passion, 59-cent tacos, do it. Because no matter what you do, you could bring it all back, every dime you spend, and you can learn to fractionalize it. Use a couple credit cards. Use 8 or 9 credit cards. Build your credit up, because then they'll let you create money that you never thought you could create. Did you know every time you sign a promissory note, it's like signing a check? So, especially here in Orange County, Jesus, we spend $1 million. That's like a crap house. And you spend $1 million on your house, you're like, okay, it's not great. You don't even have any property. It's like houses. The whole house is your property. You've got about 3 feet on this side between the neighbor next door and 3 feet on this side. And you spent like $2 million, $3 million on that house because it's a big shoebox. It goes all the way back. Yeah, we spend ridiculous amounts of money. And every time you sign one of those promissory notes, guess what's happening? You're depositing that check. This over here is the liability, the funds for that check you just deposited. What happens? The bank issues a transaction off that account that was just created on your promissory note. So these funds get debited from this account. They don't actually go to the seller, because remember, how the seller is generating his own money by endorsing the instrument that he receives. Okay? So the funds get debited. Where do they go? What happens when there's a debit? There's a credit. So that promissory note for $1 million that you just spent on your house is sitting up here in escrow. You can claim that $1 million back. Now, what can you create in your community? And you get that money back, and you take all of the money, because guess what? The IRS is going to take their share. When you're over $1 million, guess what? It's a big share. They're going to take a lot. Okay? They're going to walk with at least $400,000. Okay? So when the IRS walks with $400,000, you take that $600,000, pay your note. Guess what? Next year, you're going to get back that $600,000 minus 40%. But that second year, you could pay off your note. You've now paid off a 30-year loan in 2 years. Guess who you just benefited? The bank. Their bond rating is going to go through the frickin' roof because they got paid. They got paid with money they like to get paid with. Debt. Oh, they love debt. Give them debt all day long. They love it. Give it to them. Because now their bond ratings are going to be superb. Your credit's going to be superb. So now you go create another $1 million. You walk right over to the next bank, go, yeah, I just paid off that 30-year loan in 2 years. You guys give me a loan? Oh, yeah, what do you want? Sure. So you can now sign a promissory note for $5 million. Now you get that $5 million. Remember, when you're paying off the note, it's going to come back next year. So you're now getting $5 million minus tax back at the end of the year. You paid off the note, so now there's no more liability. The money comes back again. Could you guys do something constructive with $5 million in your community? Now, is your heart in the right place to do that? Because you could just go around creating money, but guess what? If you're not spending it, see, this is where the paradigm shifts. Up until now, the people who have had control and the people who have been wealthy are the ones who hoard their money. Well, guess what? Paradigm just shifted. You're now aware that you could be wealthier than any Rockefeller, because you can spend more than they can. Get creative, because the more you spend, the more you're going to get back. So we can do amazing things. Want to do our announcements? Let's go. Hold on. Stay where you're at. We are going to take a break in just a moment. And I've actually lost everyone on the phone, and I am aware of that, and we will get them back. Okay, so we're going to move to some maybe questions, answers that you guys may have. I know that, there's probably not a whole lot of questions because I've kind of just thrown out not a whole lot of substance for you. But I promise we will get into the substance in the following weeks. I wanted to touch more on the spiritual side of things. So you guys at least know where I'm coming from spiritually, so that when I talk about different things, oh yeah, he's crazy, he thinks that. Then you'll know. So you can push it aside if you want. Something I do want to put out there, you guys heard me say earlier that there is no achieving being a creditor, that it's just kind of a practice. So be mindful that it's always going to slam right in front of your face your ways of being a debtor. Okay? You're instantly going to you're going to take offense, you're going to be defensive, you're going to do these things over and over again. The trick is, get outside of yourself. Realize that nothing's personal. Nothing anyone ever says or does that may affect you is personal. But there's always a reflection for you to look at. So look at the things that piss you off, because those are the things you're going to learn the most from. Like those aspects of those people are like, oh, I hate when he does that. Like I remember when I was a kid, I couldn't stand my brother eating cereal in the same room with me. I couldn't stand it. It drove me nuts. All the noises he made. Yeah, I realized it was a perfect reflection of me, But I'm not aware of the slurps and noises that I make because I'm too busy eating, enjoying my food. But everything that you see in others that you don't like, it's what you don't like about yourself. Because you spot it, you got it. Okay? So, a little something for you to just always be mindful that it's always going to slam right in your face. Like, oh, look at me, I'm being an idiot. I'm being a debtor. I'm taking a position. But you can step outside of it. It's not personal. And at any moment, you can choose to be a creditor, because at any moment is a new now. If 5 minutes ago I said something and took a position, that's okay. Because now I can come from a clean space.
So in other words, you just choose not to let that bother you.
Exactly.
You make a choice to make it.
You make a choice. The most powerful thing out there is your choice, your power to decide. So, do we have any questions about... You can ask questions about anything, about things you've heard, if you've done downloads, anything. Can we pass the microphone to the back? Anything you want to ask questions about, I'll entertain right now.
Can you go over this, was it DHT that we just mentioned?
DHT. Oh, DTC?
DTC.
Well, I'll give you a brief of what the DTC is. DTC, the Depository Trust Company. Did you know that your birth certificate is a security? Okay? All birth certificates end up at the DTC. The DTC is about to open its doors to a lot of foreign nations. The DTC is going to be where all assets are held. Now remember, we're operating in bankruptcy. We've been in bankruptcy since 1789. And therefore, we can't deal in assets. We deal in what? Debt. That's all we trade around all day long is debt. Okay? The DTC is where all the assets are held. Anybody ever heard of CD and Company? CEDE? Anyone own stocks, bonds? Yeah. Every stock certificate, bond certificate, anything, they're all made out to who? CD and Company. And that's a subsidiary of the DTC. So DTC holds all the assets. And remember I was talking earlier about operating on the asset side of the account versus the liability side of the account. When you learn to operate strictly from the asset side of the account, not only will the IRS be your best friend, but so will the DTC. Because you'll be working through them to create asset balances in accounts. And you won't have one account with a balance in it on the public side. All your accounts will show a zero balance. But the asset side of those accounts, which because we're in a bankrupt democracy, assets are not visible in the public. Okay, so the DTC is basically, it's an intermediary between the private side and the public side. Okay? Any other questions?
And there in New York, you said 55 what?
55 Water Street. Don't go do nothing drastic. 55 Water Street, New York, New York.
So what's going on with the different countries coming in? Is it only U.S. citizens now that deal with it?
Soon I know the UK, Canada, and at least a handful of other nations are all going to be members of the DTC in 2010. Means that all assets for those countries will also be held at the DTC. Can we pass the microphone back here? Oh, here. I got one. Turn it on.
Do other nations work like the United States?
All nations operate like the United States because all nations are bankrupt. They're all bankrupt. Yeah, no. Well, they're not nations really, but the sovereign entities I know of are the Vatican. Vatican City is a sovereign entity. The City of London, which is not London as you know it. The City of London is a small mile-by-mile area within Greater London. It's where all the banks are. You'll notice all the international banks are pushed together right there in the City of London. And Washington, D.C., the District of Columbia. Those are the only sovereign entities I'm aware of. There may be some small nations that aren't on the IMF fiat currency system, and they're maybe still using gold and silver as money, but you don't know who they are. Anything else?
So basically, if they're part of the IMF,
then they're bankrupt. They're using a fiat currency. Oh, you got one?
Yeah, the Vatican is not sovereign. The Vatican is a suzerain nation.
Is a what nation?
Suzerain.
A what? Suzerain?
Suzerain.
And what does that mean?
They are overseen by another country, just like Switzerland is a suzerain nation.
And what country oversees
and
the Vatican?
Japan is a suzerain nation.
So what country oversees the Vatican?
They cannot declare war.
Okay. Actually, no nations can declare war. There hasn't been a war declared since when? World War II. The war to end all wars. Everything since then has been what? A police action. We operate under public policy. All nations are in bankruptcy, therefore all nations operate under public policy. Therefore, the policy enforcers, the police actions, police and policy, same word. So that's what you're operating under, public policy. And because all nations are operating under public policy, none of them can declare war. Anything else? Can you pass that back? You got to switch them on, microphone etiquette. I always turn them off.
Do you think of, or I don't know how to phrase this really, of any other system besides a monetary system that would be effective for true union and unity for the inhabitants of the planet or the universe? Or
what do you got against money?
With money, there's scarcity and there's competition, which is...
Not. There's only scarcity when you hold it back. All money is, okay, we operate, as human beings, we operate on symbols, okay? Everything you do is symbols. Every piece of communication you have, like right here, this thing that I'm doing, that's a symbol. The words that I'm speaking are symbols. When you put those words together in phrases, that's a symbol. Our letters in the alphabet are symbols. Okay? Currency is just a symbol. Okay, so we got these things, and they could be checks, they could be Federal Reserve notes. Okay? These are symbols. They symbolize energy. We exchange energy. That's all we do. When you're coming from scarcity, you're unwilling to give of yourself, of your energy. That creates the idea of a shortage. There's the belief that there's not enough of these symbols to go around. I'm telling you, there's as many as we'll create.
I'm clear on that, but if you got away from those symbols and just, for example, if
okay, you want to go to a non-commercial system, right?
Or a resource-based economy where all the,
okay, so now you're telling me that these are limited, but resources are unlimited? Really? Gold is unlimited?
As far as we know.
I'm here to tell you it's not, because the Earth itself is limited.
Well,
the Earth
true,
is like a given size, right? It's only so big. Well, you know, if I was out in space, it would look about so big.
Right, but right.
Now I'm standing on it, so it's like 21,600 nautical miles that way, all the way around, comes back to here.
Okay, but still, gold, that there's resources that could be used just to have everyone.
But they're all limited.
True.
I mean, how about we exchange air?
I'm talking about like things, necessities like food and water. And
Why not just use these? Because we can then trade these for food and water. Because see, if I provide you a service that has no commodity behind it, like right now, I'm not giving you any commodity, but you're all here. I'm imagining most of you paid money to be here. But if you all brought me oranges and shit, it'd all go bad. I'd have a house full of oranges, or Robin would have a house full of oranges.
But if you only took what you needed and everyone else just took what they required at that time, and there wasn't like any hoarding and where you just have all your needs were met.
Okay, well, what if I have a service I provide, and I'm not bringing a commodity? That would have to be my exchange, right? So why not just use symbols so that you can do your farming, you can do whatever you want to do, and then you trade your oranges for these symbols, because this symbolizes the worth of your oranges and your effort to growing those oranges. It's just a symbol. Don't give it any negative connotation. Don't make a judgment up about this thing. It's not good. It's not bad.
I agree, but what if there doesn't have to be an exchange?
There doesn't have to be. Then you're talking about the non-commercial zone, though. Okay, let's go back to the stories of the Bible. Okay, remember Eden? Any familiar with that? Eden? Okay. Eden was a non-commercial zone. There was no credit, there was no debt until God told them, don't take from this tree. You can do anything you want in the garden, but leave these two trees alone. The minute that they disobeyed the creditor, they created a debt. So what happened? They got expelled from the non-commercial zone. They became ashamed and put fig leaves on. And God said, no. Fig leaves are not the money of exchange we use in this jurisdiction. We use a special kind of money, and it's the blood of animals. That's how you'll pay your debt. So for thousands of years, we use the sacrifice of animals to pay for your debts. Remember the first tax protester, Cain, said, I'm a farmer. I can't pay my debts in the blood of animals. God said, I don't want to hear it, Cain. I don't accept fruits and vegetables. You're going to pay with the money of account that we asked for. Cain says, okay. Gets Abel, kills Abel, and goes, there's your blood. Paid my debt. That's what you asked for. That's when we entered the non-commercial zone. See, when you cease to have debts, and I'm not saying we can't go back to the non-commercial zone, but you can't go back there until you're all willing to operate at that same level of no debt, no credit. You don't owe me for anything. But the only time that works is when everyone's giving. When everyone's just giving unconditionally. That's the only time the non-commercial zone works. When you're just giving unconditionally. When your number one concern isn't yourself, your number one concern is everyone else outside of you. When you're operating from that place, well, then we can go back to the non-commercial zone. But for the time being, you're a bunch of debtors. We're going to operate in the commercial zone. So we'll use symbols to represent our energy exchange. Because anytime you have a debt or a credit, there's an exchange. And unless you're giving unconditionally and everyone else is giving unconditionally, there's a debt created every time there's something given. Okay? Just my philosophy and personal view.
If Cain was a farmer, then who was Abel?
He probably a shepherd, probably had some animals. I don't know. Yeah, don't take my word on the Bible as I paraphrase huge. I don't have any of it memorized.
Also, on this level of the game that we have this debt, there's all these funds in an escrow account. As soon as we close it and we zero it out, because this thing you could see is catching on, it's spreading, and when that zeroes out, we might want to end that system and go out of the season of the commercial system and move into a new season, which would probably look like something in our history. And also, I remember on...
I don't know. I think this is the ultimate system. When you're not using a commodity-based currency. Because the commodity-based currency automatically creates the sense of lack, scarcity. If we used gold with 7 billion people on the earth, everyone who could rub 2 gold pieces together, hoarding it. I'm not going to just give all my gold away because then I might not get it back. Whereas if all we're using is funny money, shit that we could just print up all day long, I could make a negotiable instrument. Here, you want to see a money order? Money order. Pay to the order of Jack. And pay $20.
You better sign in blue.
It's a private instrument. There, negotiable instrument. That's money. We can create this all day long. Gosh, issue date. 30 April 2009. All right. So, that's a negotiable instrument. We can create these all day long. And it represents our energy. There's no limit. I mean, literally, I can write it on anything. I can write it on a rock. If we want to trade rocks, we can trade rocks. Paper's pretty cool, especially if it's made from a renewable resource that grows to maybe full size in one season, not something that takes 100 years to grow to its full potential. But the fact that, hemp is one of them. There's a multitude of bamboo. Dude, bamboo grows like crazy. You can harvest a shitload of bamboo in a very small amount of time, create a shit ton of paper, and you can produce these little symbolic instruments all day long. It's a renewable resource. Whereas gold, silver, not necessarily a renewable resource. Now, you get into alchemy, and you may be able to produce gold and silver at will, but right now, we don't really practice alchemy. And if we did, then that would just kind of throw a whole wrench into our system of commerce. If gold was something that was valuable, I mean, as far as our well-being and health was concerned, then we would probably find some kind of a way to create it from lower metals, or just bringing a bunch of electrons and protons and neutrons together and going, gold. So, any other questions? Questions or comments or statements?
So in the current monetary financial system, how is war and how do you see war and different politics and scarcity and the barbaric system that's in place now slowing down or transitioning into this, everyone learning to do this and having to buy whatever they want?
It's not about even learning this. It's about taking responsibility.
Or how do you see the transition, or if everyone becoming responsible and not wanting to have politics and war and scarcity? And
it's just about taking responsibility. Like, instead of being a victim, like, oh my God, I'm a victim, my country's a victim, this condition was created by someone outside of us. And instead standing up and taking responsibility, even if you're taking responsibility for someone who seemingly is outside of your community. In my belief, there is no one on the planet outside of your community. It's all your community. You don't like what's going on in Africa? Well, then change it. Be a creditor. Eliminate all the debt that keeps getting created. How many have seen the movie The International? Remember in that movie, the bank said that it's not we don't give loans with the intent of making money off of the interest. It's not why we give loans. They were trading weapons, buying weapons from China and giving them to African warlords at a loss. Why would they do that? Why would they lose money in a transaction? Creating a debt. Because who controls? Creditors control. And we all know the valuable metals and stones that can be found in Africa. And if we can control that land, we control the resources of that land. And that's why they create debt at a loss. It's not about making money off the loans. They know these African warlords aren't going to pay them back. Just like the King of England, when he paid the debt of the United States. He was hoping we weren't going to pay it back. He was banking on it. Yeah, because in reality, that's all it takes. And if we operate in the creditor-debtor system and all contracts are honored, when you decide to step up and be the creditor, then you can have control. And if we, as moral, ethical people, decide, hey, we're going to go in and we're going to extinguish the debts of the Congo, we're going to extinguish the debts of all these nations that are currently enslaved by their debt. And we build the social systems there that are required for them to operate. We bring our commercial energy. I mean, we're already, don't you see? Our world is basically heaving and hoeing right now. It's on the verge of collapse because all of a sudden we've built such an effective system that we don't have to work. We've created so many systems that provide things for us at almost the flip of a switch. And now we're kind of turning around. What do we do? What do we do? What do we do? Instead of saying, okay, I've got this energy that I can put into creating something for someone else. See, we've always come from scarcity. So the only reason we went and got a job at the job that we got our job at was for the idea of abundance. Right? Nobody goes to work somewhere because they want to make less money. People look for a job that's going to pay them as much as they can offer, as much as they can be a commodity. Like, I charge $200 an hour for my time, at least. I'm worth that. People pay it all day long. Now, someone else holds themselves at $13 an hour. And they get paid $13 an hour all day long. That's where they hold themselves. But in reality, the dollars per hour don't matter. Because if there is no demand for the commodity of what you're offering, well, then create something. Because there is no shortage of shit to do. Let me see the hands again. Who's content? And we all feel that way. No matter what nation you go to, you're not going to find a bunch of people who are like, oh yeah, woohoo! We're pumped on how things are. Don't change a thing. So there's no shortage of things to do. You can find something to do anywhere. And that's the commercial energy that you bring. That's the commercial energy that you're going to put into it. And that has infinite value. Whatever you want to make up, it'll be worth that. And people will pay it. Create what you want to create. Microphone. There should be some floating around.
A major portion of the present system was developed back toward the turn of the century, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the chief proponents thereof was one certain John Maynard Keynes.
Okay.
And he was also a big proponent of this philosophy of scarcity. And I'm wondering, in the historical events of things, while they're developing the system, they're also saying that there's only so much to go around, and so they wind up with crazy ideas like the world can only support so much population. And so they've been pushing scarcity as a point of view now for many decades.
Okay, who's they?
John Maynard Keynes.
Is he still alive?
No, he's long gone. But he was in with the big banking systems in order to develop what we have now.
Fiat currency system?
Yeah.
Okay. And what's the question? Or is that just a statement?
That was just a comment.
Okay.
But if you were aware of the man and the philosophy of scarcity, I thought maybe you could expand on it or something like that.
Well, scarcity, again, it's just an idea. Just like, okay, let me give you an example. The idiot box that we all have in our house. It's a driving force in what you think and how you act. How many are afraid of swine flu? Is that what it's called? Pork flu, whatever it is. Pig flu? Anyone? Anyone? No one? No one's scared? Okay, good. The funny thing is, whatever's going on in Mexico with the pig flu, it's still the last thing on a very long list of things that are more likely to kill you in Mexico. Okay? But this is a commercial-based system. And when you can take something out of the ordinary and create mania or hysteria over it, what does that drive? Ratings. Everyone's watching the news. Everyone's watching these shows that have this as a topic because it's this new thing, it's interesting. But in reality, it has no more validity or deserves any more of your attention than anything else that's going on that never gets any airtime on the news because we don't really want to see it. We're not a victim to the system. We're creating it. We're perpetuating it. We want what they give us. It wouldn't be being given if you weren't buying it. You don't want petroleum-based cars? Well, let's stop fucking buying petroleum-based cars. Hello? Stop blaming. Start taking action. Because in reality, you're not a victim to anything. You're creating it all. The idea of scarcity is just that, and it's an idea. Something someone made up. And it's funny because they created a system that we create all the money in. How can there be scarcity if we're the source of all the money? And at any moment, we can create some more. Anytime we choose, we can go create some money, create some money, create some money all day long. And that's, again, just the idea of scarcity. The idea of scarcity is what is holding down the economy right now. Everyone believes that there's some kind of scarcity going on. So they're all hoarding their money and holding it and putting it into savings and, oh my God, don't spend it. Because God forbid you spend it. And if we all do that, what happens to your economic system? It starts to break down. So, again, it's just a concept. It's just an idea. You can either go with the idea of scarcity, and you come from that and live that all your days. And you will find everything you need to support your position. Because that's what we do. We take a position, and then we look for evidence to support our position. So, I want to believe in scarcity, so I'm going to find all the evidence in the world that scarcity is the driving force. That's what I do. I find evidence to support my positions. Just like you have an attitude towards this guy, like this guy's a dick. You guys agree? This guy's a dick. Okay? And anytime he says or does something that supports that, oh, that's more evidence for me. See? I told you he's a dick. And the funny thing is, he's being sweet, he's giving, you'll never even notice it. It's like it's off your radar. Or look at this dick trying to be nice. What a dick. Because it's just more evidence. It's more evidence to support your position that John's a dick. There's no getting out of it. No matter what he does, he's always going to be a dick. Okay? So, and just like this idea of scarcity. The idea of scarcity, you're always going to be looking for evidence to support it. You're always going to be, if that's your belief, just like, let's take a religious person. A religious person, a devoutly religious Christian, will always find evidence of Jesus in their life, will always find evidence of Satan in their life. Because that's their system, that's their belief, that's their come from. So they're always looking for evidence to support it. Like you've seen in Mexico where all of a sudden they'll find the image of Mary in a tree. It's like, oh my God! Or in a pancake. Oh my God, Jesus is in my pancake. Evidence. Okay? It's what you're going to see. It's what you're going to create. It's more evidence to support your position. Who takes positions? Debtors. Debtors are always coming from scarcity. If they weren't coming from scarcity, they wouldn't be debtors. They'd be creditors. Microphone.
At the very beginning, about not taking a position. Mm-hmm. So how do you not take a position on anything?
Be in the question.
Be in the question.
Be in the question.
Okay. I don't get it right now. But.
No, you won't. You don't. And you never will. But remember it. Be in the question.
Thank you.
Do we got a microphone in the back? Yeah. Where's the other microphone? We have two floating around somewhere. Oh, there it is. Okay, go ahead.
All right. You were talking about how the King of England, he bought the debt, mm-hmm. and also the warlords, the banks knew they weren't going to pay him back.
Right.
So when we become creditors, are we also looking for people to go into debt and not pay it back? I mean, how does it work? Like, once we become creditors, we're in control, but are we, like, what happens after that?
You want to control those dead things. Remember we were talking about dead entities? See, the cool thing is the system's been set up so that it'll just let you control it. You buy up all the U.S. debt, all of California's debt, all of the county's debt, and all of the city's debt. They'll let you hold those bonds as long as you want. Even when they've come to term after 10 years, 30 years, you can hold on to them. And you still owe the debt. You still own the debt. And they're still going to send you dividends and revenue for it. You could just keep holding it. Because it has no energy. It isn't alive. It can't do anything. You take all the people out of a bank, what's the bank do? Nothing. It just sits there. We're the ones pushing all the buttons. And it's funny because we've gotten it into our heads that it's all these dead things that are in control. They have absolutely no control. We're the ones pressing all the buttons. We're the ones making things work. We're the ones who make the bank do what it does. Without us going like this, boop, 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 the bank wouldn't do anything. Without us going boop, 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 the government wouldn't do anything. It would just be. It would just do nothing. It's from us. We create. Hold on, we got one in the back. Turn it on.
My question is in the same line. I was excited to share what you say about buying bonds and, of your community and your city to many people. And most people said, no, the government is too big. They will always put us in more debt and more debt. I'm not buying into this idea. What do you say to that?
What do I say to that? Like I'm trying to enroll them in the idea?
I was all excited, sharing. I thought it was great ideas, and it's like putting me down like crazy. No, I will let you buy the bonds and we'll let you, do that stuff. The government is too big, right?
Their paradigm is that the government is this big thing and it controls them.
They spend like crazy. There's too much spending.
All they're going to see is evidence to support that. You can lead a horse to water. And that's it. I mean,
even if it's true that it's going into more debt all the time, and the more you buy their bonds, the more you buy their debts, the more they're going to go into debt.
Yeah, probably. And if we buy it all up, we own all the debt. Yeah, is it true that we'd be freeing them up to create more debt? Yeah. What does more debt mean? This means more money floating around, moving around, doing more things. What that means to me is that more people are doing stuff.
And we're speaking English, not Chinese.
Yeah, and if the government is spending money, they're stimulating an economy somewhere. They're exchanging energy. They're giving energy. That's all that's happening, So, yeah, they may keep on creating more. Is it bad? Is it good? I'm not going to make up a judgment about it. It just is. And it may or may not happen or be true. But that's not my concern. Because I'll buy up every dime of it if I can. Because in the end, all it's going to create is more exchange of energy. Being afraid to give it away, remember, it's just a symbol. And I like to use as a synonym for energy, I call it love. If you're willing to give unconditionally love, and if in giving your love, you're enabling something else to give more love, how can that be bad? Because it's only a symbol. And that symbol can be love. And if we free it up so that everyone just gives it unconditionally, you change the world. You'll have a much different place to live.
Thanks for throwing enlightenment in the commerce.
Thanks for what?
For throwing enlightenment teachings in the commerce.
You're very welcome. The funny thing is, my spiritual belief system has been this way for years and years and years and years. Nobody would ever listen to me. It's when I figured out the banking system. All of a sudden, I can stand up in front of a room of people, and they'll listen to my spiritual bullshit all day long. Yeah, get a microphone over here.
I have a lot of questions. I can only narrow down to two right now. First of all, I was just going to keep this really simple because you're being very, very vague right now. And I think I kind of got it, but I'll probably get it when I get home. So I'm going to go buy a car. I'm giving someone my credit card. Hey, I wanted to buy this car. I'm exchanging the energy. I'm giving them my money, and then I'm getting the car. Okay?
Right.
So there's an exchange. There's a debit and there's a credit. That's an equivalent exchange of what I agreed upon.
Right.
And then, so now I'm getting more money back because I stimulate the economy, and therefore I should get more back. I mean, wouldn't that be not congruent? Would not be not an exchange of energy?
Don't confuse banking with labor and the exchange of goods and services. See, when I'm talking about the money you get back, you only get back money if you're doing it through a bank. And what you're doing with the bank is just banking. You created that money. When you went and got that car, okay, you got the car. It's a piece of shit car. It's a jalopy. Okay. Oh, there we go. All right. So the car you created, let's say the car this car probably only cost about $5,000. So this car here, you created $5,000. When you used your credit card, there wasn't already $5,000 sitting somewhere. That's the idea you have. You think that's what happened. You think the bank goes, oh, okay, well, we're going to hook you up and we're going to give you the $5,000 to buy that car. No, that's not what happened. You created $5,000.
Well, because the $5,000 they use is using someone's savings account, a checking account,
Now, whether you use, even if you use a checking account, okay, let's say, okay, here's your checking account, right? Here's your checking account. You have $1,000 in your checking account. Okay, so now this has been discounted to $1,000. Okay? You write a check for $1,000, right? So now you've got this $1,000. That $1,000 you created when you wrote the check and signed the check. That's a new $1,000. It has nothing to do with what's over here in your balance. Now, to keep things from getting out of hand, they debit your account. But in order to debit your account, they need to credit another account. So they credit this escrow account up here for that $1,000. Okay? You created a new $1,000. That $1,000 is up here. They withheld your interest in this money you created and put it into escrow. Okay? So this $1,000 was new money. Now, yeah, you did get a car. Okay? You got the car. But you also created this $1,000. This $1,000, but the $1,000 that paid for the car was created by whoever endorsed this check. See, your $1,000 that you created ends up over here. It's not in Joe, the used car salesman's account. Joe, the used car salesman, got the funds on your check from the Federal Reserve. Federal Reserve credited Joe's deposit account. Your account got debited, and this escrow account got credited. So I'm not saying, yeah, if you want to, you think some kind of even exchange happened over here, that's fine. What I'm saying is everything's prepaid already. Okay, that system, the Christian system, the New Testament is a new contract. The new contract is that everything's prepaid. This was already paid for. You know who paid for it? You did. When it came off the manufacturing line in Detroit, you paid for it. You know how? Your credit fuels industry. Those corporations can't create money. All the money you create funds everything that gets built in your society. Every fruit, every vegetable that gets grown. You're funding it. You're prepaying it. See, Jesus died on the T-chart to prepay your debts. This is prepaid. When you created $1,000, that was just bonus. That's another $1,000 you just put into the system, which, guess what? It's going to go to build some other cars, some other time. But you created a new $1,000 that wasn't there before. Now, if you don't claim this, you're creating debt. And the debt gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger to the point where we're at $11 trillion in debt. Because you're not claiming this money back. Because what happens is after 3 years, the bank says, hey, you know what? We got all this money in this account over here, and nobody's claimed it. Salvage law, IRS says there's a 36-month testing period on that money. If nobody claims that money in 36 months, the bank gets to claim it. It's like, okay, we're going to claim it. But because the bank can't create any money, they take these funds, they don't pay a tax on it, So they're not paying down that debt that we have to the international creditors, whereas when you claim this money back, you're paying tax on it, paying down the interest on the national debt. Banks don't pay tax on it because it's sitting in their escrow account. So they just go, and they move it over to a deposit account, but because it never left the bank, they don't have to pay a tax on it. So what I'm saying is, it's always a circle. And wherever it starts is where it needs to end. You created the $1,000. It needs to end up back here. And if it doesn't, it gets lost out here and becomes debt. And the debt just gets bigger and bigger and bigger until you start claiming it back and paying a tax on it. That tax is there is a requirement. We need there to be that tax. Because if we're not constantly taking a little chunk out every time, well then you have an infinite circulation. And see, infinite circulation creates, again, no drive. Because people will just sit on their ass and go, okay, well, I made my money my first 3 years of working at Taco Bell. I'm just going to circulate it for the rest of my life. And if you're not contributing to society, then you're a suck on society. You're a taker.
Can I ask you another question still different from that?
Okay.
I have a family member. She gives. I mean, she would be so freaking broke, and she would just love to give. And right now, she just doesn't have anything. Is it something with the mind, her spirituality, or whatever that is? But she would I would, I don't have money, but then I would do this and buy this to give to this person and that person that she just happened to know for, God, a couple days. Mm-hmm. I don't know. How do you explain that? Because you said it's going to come around.
How do you explain unconditional love and unconditional giving? Yeah, see, you don't understand it because you haven't done it yet. When you start doing it, you'll get it. Because in reality, there is nothing better. There is nothing better than unconditional giving.
Nothing, and she's miserable.
Are you sure she's miserable?
Yeah, she complained to me every day.
She complains to you every day? I bet you she's not miserable. Because if she gives and is always wanting to give, then she's living her life exactly how she wants it to. And so is every single person in this room. You all have what you have because that's what you want. It's a choice. Don't try to tell me anything else. I ain't buying it. Because you have exactly what you want. Because if you wanted something else, you'd create something else. It's the power you have. Don't be a victim. Don't be a debtor. Can we pass the microphone back here? Yeah. Okay. Do you want?
Yeah, I got a question.
Okay. Can we get a microphone? Right here. Here's a microphone.
Okay. Let's
turn on.
Okay. Let's take these cars and all the issues and just keep it straight with money.
Okay.
So let's say that I have $10,000 and I wire it to your account. Mm-hmm. Okay. Does that create $10,000 in that third-party account that I can collect later?
Yes.
Okay.
Because you're authorizing the creation of that $10,000. See, just like when you did the promissory note on the house, the funds typically nowadays, I imagine most of the time the funds get wired to the seller. I don't know. I don't actually deal in real estate. But I assume most of the time the seller just gets the funds wired.
Right.
Who was the source of those funds? Well, the source was your signature on the promissory note. That was the asset that got deposited. The funds, your authorization created the funds from the seller's account. Then they had to withhold your interest in those funds by putting it into an escrow account. That's what happened. It's the same as writing a check. Signing a promissory note is what? Debt. Isn't all our money debt? That's all we trade on all day long is we trade debt. Trade debt. Bonds. Bond is debt. I mean, it's an indenture. It's debt.
Okay. So how long would it take for me to collect that money off of a wire that I would send to somebody? So let's say I send a wire tomorrow.
What month did you do it in?
Let's say if I did one tomorrow.
Okay. And tomorrow's May.
Tomorrow's May.
Okay. It's going to take you at least 8 months.
8 months.
Because we got wait, we got 7 more months. Yeah, if you get your tax return in by January 1st,
Okay.
all done, I imagine you can get your return by, what do you think? February? February 1st? Oh, okay, so you got to wait till January 15th, and then you're not going to get it until probably about February 1st to February 15th.
Okay.
So less than a year. But if you wired those funds in December 25th, you only got like a month.
Okay.
You get all that money back.
I got another question then. What if I wired $10,000 to somebody's account tomorrow in the morning, and then when they received that wire, they wired it to somebody else?
Okay.
The
then
same
they created a new
$10,000.
Yes, they created another 10,000.
Okay.
It's not the same, but
Okay. So then 2 people now could collect that a different $10,000
yes.
each.
Be careful though where you're going with this. Don't start wiring the money back and forth to each other.
Not back and forth, but to different people.
Okay. I get what you're saying. Yeah. And if it's not a scheme, realistically it should always be offsetting a debt. There should always be a debt there. Okay? Because that's how you're contributing when you're discharging a debt with that money. Whereas if we're just moving money around, I'm not saying you can't get away with it, but at the end of the day, you got to look at your T-charts and make sure you got a zero balance. And was there a debt that initiated that transaction?
Well, here's a realistic situation. Let's say that I owe Bob the $10,000, but Bob owed Sam $10,000.
Yep. Then those are 2 separate debts. You're creating 2 separate streams of income at that point, and that's fine. As long as there's a debt, and the debt is being discharged in each circumstance, and you're not just trading money back and forth.
Not back and forth, but to different people.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh,
and is Sam and Bob providing some kind of a service or a product for this 10,000?
Correct.
Okay, if it's keeping them busy, then yeah. Do it all day long. If Sam and Bob are actually busy doing something for the 10 grand, then good.
Okay.
We get the microphone right back behind you.
Okay, my question is, so you pay a debt.
No,
it is on. Okay. So you pay this debt, and the funds are created. The bank takes that money out of your account and puts it in an escrow account within that bank, correct? And then you claim this money back. The IRS or whatever pays it to you, and then the bank gives the money to the IRS then?
Yes. IRS goes in and collects it because you're going to file an acquisition of those funds before you claim a return of those funds.
Okay.
See, when you file that acquisition, that gives the IRS permission to go in there and go, hey, guess what? You got some money that ain't yours. And guess what? We owe this guy that money, so we're going to take our cut and we're going to send him his. Circle completed. Okay? So you got to give the IRS that permission first. Because if that acquisition isn't filed, then the IRS says, okay, we hear you may owe this guy money. Pay it up. And they go, oh, no, we don't have any record of owing him any money. The IRS goes, oh, okay, sorry to bother you. And they come back to you and go, you filed a frivolous return. They say they don't owe you any money. Okay? So we'll go, actually next week, what we'll do is we'll probably spend 2 or 3 weeks on money and original issue and principal and interest and a whole banking overview. Okay? And in those 3 classes, you guys will hopefully, I still feel like I'm explaining this to people who have been following for the last 20 weeks. So not everyone gets it right away. But if you actually read the documents that I recommend to you guys, please read the documents. Because a lot of them are from good resources like the Federal Reserve, the IRS. Like, these are good documents. Don't go off and read Guru Johnson's stuff. Don't listen to me. They're telling you. You know where I got all this information? Federal Reserve. I went straight to the source. And they tell you right in their own publications, here's how banking works, here's how money's created. Oh, cool. Thanks. And then I read the IRS publications. Oh, well, how do I acquire that? Since I have an interest in it. And the IRS goes, oh, okay, you want to acquire, you fill out this form. Here's how you fill out that form. Oh, you created money. So you're an original issuer. Well, then here's how you claim the interest in that. Because there's an original issue discount that was created because there was a redemption value and there was an issue price. And IRS defines original issue discount as the redemption value minus the issue price. How much did the bank pay you for that $1,000 check? Zero. That's a zero issue price. What's the redemption value? $1,000. So that's an original issue discount of $1,000. You're the issuer of it. The bank's holding it. So they're withholding your funds. That's what they did when they debited your account. They withheld your funds. You have a right to it. You have an interest to it. You created more money. And as such, you have a claim. When you guys get commercial law and you get that you have a claim to anything you create. And that's all we're doing. We're just perfecting a security interest. The IRS just so happens to create forms that allow us to perfect a security interest really easy. We just have to type in a few EINs, social security number, address, description. Boom, we've got a registered claim. And that's how everything in commerce works. You make a claim. You can't get anything in commerce without a claim. And there's 100 different forms that a claim can take.
So that escrow is in the banking system. It's in the bank.
What is in the bank mean?
No, I'm trying to pin down where is this escrow that you're talking about.
Are you suggesting that there's a physical location?
I'm just asking. I don't know where it is.
Do numbers on a screen exist anywhere but on the screen?
A hard drive.
Or a hard drive?
A hard drive, yeah. That's what we believe.
That's
what we have faith in.
And that's what the whole money system's based on. Faith, energy, and spirit. Okay? So we're kind of over our time for the room. So they want to kick us out. So I want to thank everybody for coming, and the downloads will be available. Those of you who have registered your email addresses, as soon as I get the email from Robin, I'll send you out downloads for this session, so you'll be able to download the audio. You'll be able to download the videos. We didn't have any documents tonight, so there's no documents to download, but each week we'll have documents and other stuff that after each class I'll send you a link in your email to download everything. Thank everybody for coming, and I'll see you next week.